I'm Sandy Irani. I am the Associate Director of the Simons Institute, and I'm fortunate today to have with me Alvy Ray Smith. And we're going to hear about his amazing, extraordinary career working in academic research and teaching, computer graphics and animation, filmmaking, executive leadership, writing, and art. So welcome, Alvy. It's really a pleasure to have you here.
It's fun to be here. And when you live, I'm in my 80th year, so when you live that long, the stories just rack up just from just time.
We're looking forward to that. So we're going to touch on a lot of the various strands of your work. But to start with, can you tell me a little bit about your early life?
My early life was in New Mexico.
Okay.
I was born in Texas, but I don't tell people that. I grew up in New Mexico.
Okay.
And I had an artist uncle who taught me how to oil paint. This is very important, turns out in the long run. I didn't know it at the time, but he would let me into his studio as long as I wouldn't say anything. Absolutely quiet, and sit on the floor.
Okay.
It was painful and quiet, but I did it.
Yeah.
I did it. I learned how to prepare a canvas and clean the brushes and mix the oil paints and fall in love with the smells of an oil painter's studio. And then I became an oil painter myself. For a lot of years.
An important influence on many aspects of your career, right?
And I also went to school at New Mexico State University, which is right next to White Sands Missile Range, where rockets were taking off all the time. So high tech was kind of.
You had that.
It was there. High tech was going off. My Uncle George was teaching me art, and I got introduced by somebody from White Sands to this marvelous thing called a computer. And fell in love like so many of us have.
History, yes.
And, years later, I put those two things together magically.
So you had the confluence of art and tech right there.
Right there
from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Now you began your research, early research in theoretical computer science studying cellular automata theory. Is that right?
That's right.
Can you tell me a little bit about that period of your life? What questions were you thinking about at the time? What motivated you to move on from there?
Well, let me back up just a little bit. I came from New Mexico to Stanford for graduate school because I wanted to learn this new subject called artificial intelligence. This is 1965.
Okay.
Show you how long that's been around. And I learned Lisp from McCarthy. And after a couple of years, I said, I don't think this is going to happen in my lifetime.
All right.
And, I'm revisiting that now, but nobody could show me the way, and I couldn't see any logical path from what I was being taught to how this works, which is what I really wanted to know, right? But I still want to know.
Yeah.
And so I changed to computation theory, and I was particularly attracted to cellular automata theory because what we call them cells, and I was interested in living things which were made of cells, and I thought, sort of, at least poetically, there was some connection between living things and cellular automata. In fact, I wrote my thesis on self-reproducing machines.
Okay.
Which again, I thought of as, not really life, but it's life-like.
Yes.
And might be a pathway to understanding the computation we think of as a living thing.
Right.
I think that's still a possibility, but I left it behind.
So I see the connection because AI and cellular automata started connecting the math and the CS.
Yeah, there was even artificial life, they called it for a while.
Yes.
And I went to the Santa Fe Institute one year and presented my self-reproducing machine concept. It was a non-trivial self-reproducing machines. The machines had to be computation universal.
Okay.
Or didn't count.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So von Neumann had done it first. He and Stanislaw Ulam had almost finished a book proving the existence of a self-reproducing machine. And it was, the book. And von Neumann died and it was finished by somebody else. But I took that and I reduced that book to 8 pages. I use the recursion theorem, and it falls out from the recursion theorem, which I guess von Neumann didn't know.
Simplification is a beautiful thing.
It just fell out. Oh, okay, that's easy. Too easy, All right. Okay, mathematically, I did a one-dimensional universal cellular automaton, and that's cool.
That's great.
But then art comes back into it because remember the Game of Life?
Uh-huh.
The Game of Life came out in Scientific American magazine. And I remember I was in New York City by now teaching at NYU. And I looked at in Martin Gardner's column, which I'd grown up reading, was about the Game of Life. And I knew immediately that was a cellular automaton. And I could tell by reading that nobody had associated those two things, Game of Life and cellular automata. So I decided to call my hero, Martin Gardner, who lived up the Hudson River somewhere, and tell him. And I did that. And he said, well, that's remarkable. Can I come down and spend the day with you?
Great.
I went, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
And he did. And he came down. So this is the time, I graduated in '69, still had the long hair, still had the hippie look. And so did most young males in New York City at the time. So Martin Gardner, this nice little man, comes down and he looks around and he's kind of shocked at how hirsute all the males were. And I was in kind of shock that he was shocked because his book, the Illustrated Alice, that's not the right, it was Alice in Wonderland, the annotated Alice. The annotated Alice in Wonderland was de rigueur reading in the acid underworld of the United States. And he
didn't understand
know about
who his
that.
fan base
He
was.
didn't know why it was so popular. And
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't even tell this guy. That's just too big a cultural leap for him. And he said something like, I'm just a philosopher. He kind of played it simply. He said, I'm just a philosopher. I don't know math very well. Can you explain the details? So I had proved a theorem at an early switching and automata theory conference, now known as FOCS.
Yes.
On recognizing a palindrome in real time with a cellular automaton.
Okay.
And I had proved that theorem. I just proved it. So when Martin Gardner came to me and said, that subject has been the most popular subject Scientific American has ever published.
Wow.
The Game of Life
Yeah.
was. And the publisher wants to make it the cover story of the next issue, which would be February '71. And so you should submit some cover designs, and I'll submit some cover designs, and the publisher will select one to be the cover.
All right.
So the first thing that came to my mind was a colorized proof of this space-time diagram that I had used to prove that palindromes could recognize, that cellular automata could recognize palindromes in real time. Real simple proof.
Yeah.
I think that's all I submitted was that one design. He submitted a couple of designs by Oolong, which by all rights should have won. But the publisher of Scientific American was a palindrome buff.
Oh, okay.
I got the cover. I got the cover of the February '71 Scientific American. And all of a sudden, I started getting letters from all over the world. And I suddenly felt, this must be what fame feels like.
Okay, your little...
Just this little
teaser.
somebody who starts recognizing you.
Right.
And you're not sure why, but in this case it was a Game of Life and the scientific, that coming together. And
which in the world of science, this is big news.
It was new to me.
Yeah.
I'm this little kid from New Mexico, right? And
and probably most FOCS papers don't have such beautiful artwork to go with them too. So it's really
it was pretty simple.
Yeah.
Art is kind of a loose term for this, but it was colorful.
Yeah.
And I'm still proud of it. I have it hanging in my house. So it turns out again, I think my major contributions to theoretical computer science are pictures, not theorems, although I did some theorems too.
Well, that's good to contribute both. We're happy to have all the contributions. So now, you were the first director of computer graphics at Lucasfilm.
Yes.
How did you make the jump to industry from academia? What was the impetus to do that?
I was forced to,
Okay.
basically. So I let me back up a little bit. I broke my leg skiing
Mm-hmm.
when I was a professor in New York. I was in
Okay.
New Hampshire, I think. I broke this femur, and I was laid up for 3 months. And during that 3 months, I said, Alvy, you're not doing anything about your art. You're making a major mistake in life.
Okay.
Just proving theorems is not who you are. So
Okay.
I vowed that when I came out of the full body cast that I was in, I would renounce my
Okay.
professorship at NYU and go to California where something good would happen.
All right. Now, what films did you work on there?
At Lucasfilm?
At Lucasfilm.
Hardly any. That was one
Okay.
of the surprises. And the film we worked on was not George Lucas's.
Oh, okay.
It was Star Trek,
Oh,
not Star
Trek.
Wars.
Okay.
So Paramount
Mm-hmm.
hired Industrial Light and Magic, which is the special effects division of Lucasfilm,
Mm-hmm.
to do special effects for their movie Star
Right.
Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Okay.
And they wanted some of this newfangled computer graphics in their movie. And the guys at ILM said, we don't do that, but I think that's what the new guys next door, namely us,
Yeah.
I think that's what they do.
Go talk to Alvy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they hauled me over, and I landed the job for a 1 minute
Yeah.
shot in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. So I brought the group together, and I knew this was the big break.
Yeah. This was it.
I had assembled this amazing team of geniuses, I call them. They were. They are. They're just really smart people who want to be in the movies, and artistically and technically. And George never came and asked for us.
Okay.
So when I got this Paramount thing, I realized, okay, this is the break, not George. This group. I brought the team together. I said, we got this. We've got the big break. And we're going to make people at Paramount very happy with our shot. And we're going to make people in the audience, the Star Trekkies, really happy because it'll make lots of narrative sense and push the movie along story-wise. But what this really is a 60-second commercial to George Lucas so he'll know what the hell he's got.
Okay. And he got the message.
And the way I did that, and I still don't know how I knew this, but I knew George Lucas never takes his eye off the camera.
Okay.
No matter what the emotion.
Yeah.
If you try to watch a movie and keep track of the camera, the director's failed because you haven't been sucked into the emotion.
Right.
It's really hard to do. I've tried to do it.
Yeah.
George could do it. I think he could do both. He could track well.
Yeah.
Had to, right?
Yeah.
So I said, we're going to put a camera shot in here that would be impossible for a real camera to make. It's going to spin around and do all sorts of amazing things. It won't be gratuitous computer graphics 101, wowie zowie. It'll make perfect narrative sense.
But it'll show the possibilities.
But he's watching the camera.
Right.
So we did that. And sure enough, the day after the premiere, he stepped foot into my 1 foot. He's a kind of a shy guy. Stepped 1 foot in my office. He said, great camera shot. You
got through, yeah.
And he had us in his next movie, just one, which was Return of the Jedi. We had one simple shot. And he told his best buddy, Steven Spielberg, about us, and we were in his next movie, Sherlock Holmes. And then
it went from there. So, so let's talk about Pixar now. So I looked up your dates at Pixar, and they coincided 86 to 91, which was exactly my time as a graduate student here at Berkeley. And I have a very vivid memory of going with my buddies down to a cinema on Shattuck, seeing a series of short animators and seeing that iconic lamp play with the ball. And we were blown away, absolutely amazed with it.
And so were the animators of the world. The best hire of my life was John Lasseter. He was this animator. Foolishly, I thought I was an animator until I met a real one. Okay. And found out, oh, no, you're not. Oh, no, you're not. Yeah. He was trained at CalArts, which was the school that Walt Disney had formed to train animators. Yeah. And he was one of the top graduates from CalArts in animation, character animation. So he had all these friends from that world who were skeptical about computers and animation.
Mm-hmm.
Surely computers are these rigid.
Right. Yeah. What would they?
So he's looking around, and John was, he had leapt out in front of all of them. That's guess why I snapped him up. Because so obviously he was ready, and he was talented, but he needed to prove to his animation colleagues that computers could do it. So he just looked around at his desk at Lucasfilm. We all had antique desks. This was Marshall Lucas's influence, and we had green glass lamps, and we had a Luxo lamp. Every desk had that. That was just a computer terminal. Okay. So he said, "Well, I'll just make that lamp come alive."
Wow.
And he did.
And there was this history. Yeah. Now it's become just.
And then everybody said.
Yeah.
And then everybody said, "Oh." So John's story is that he was just shaking his boots because Jim Blinn, who's one of the geniuses of computer graphics, approached him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of a stern-looking guy. He's not really stern, but he looks at okay. And he said, "Oh no, I've done something wrong. I've violated some computer graphics ethic or something,
Yeah.
And all Jim wanted to know was what's the gender of the lamps. Was it a mother or a father? And John knew he had won. Because it didn't matter to him what he thought the gender was. It doesn't matter.
It was so imaginative and so amazing. So, so tell us a little bit about how you started Pixar and the story of the name, which I believe you came up with.
I did. I did come up with the name.
Vice President. Yeah.
So we start. This is where the force play came in. George, we probably would have stayed happily at Lucasfilm forever if George hadn't divorced Marcia.
Okay.
Or vice versa, whatever. They divorced. Okay. And, in California's community property. So overnight, George Lucas loses half his fortune.
All right.
So he never was quite sure who we were, right?
Okay.
We kind of come in the side door on the movies. And so I went into my partner at Capital, the co-founder of Pixar with me. I went into Ed's office and I said, "Hey, Ed, we're going to get fired. George never understood who we are. And he's just lost half his fortune. He can't support it. Our group was 40,
you saw it coming,
40 people. I said, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
Let's start a company, I say.
Okay.
Now, this is two computer nerds talking to each other. We
daring,
weren't business guys. We weren't entrepreneurs. We went across the street. This is in Marin County. Mm-hmm. Went across the street to a clean, well-lighted place for books.
Okay. Yeah.
And bought 4 business books.
Yeah.
Starting
companies for dummies.
How to read P&Ls and just little thin, silly books. I mentioned they were silly books, but he got 2 and I got 2. And the amazing thing is it worked. It was really hard. We quickly figured out that we could not make a movie yet, which is our goal. We'd had a goal since the mid-70s of being the first group in the world to make a feature-length, completely computed movie.
Yeah, that was a little ways off, but
it took us 20 years, but we didn't know that. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
And, we had because of an event I won't go into right now. We knew with cold fact that we needed another 5 years of Moore's law in order to get enough computation power to do a feature-length movie cost effectively. Okay, what are we going to do for 5 years?
Yeah.
We started this company to keep our group of geniuses together.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? Well, software doesn't make enough money to support that many people. And making television commercials doesn't make enough money to support that many people.
Okay.
There's only one thing we can do: hardware. We had built a machine called the Pixar image computer for George Lucas. It's kind of paying our dues, was building hardware and software for George, which satisfied him. Let's do what they do in Silicon Valley. We'll take our prototype, capitalize it, and turn it into a product and sell it, even though we don't know anything about computer manufacturing.
Details, right?
Okay, so I wrote up the business plan, and then we went through the hard problem of you got to finance the business plan. First, you had to convince all 40 people that they were going to sign on with us. Okay. And we did that by letting everybody have a share of the company.
All right.
Everybody, no matter what your title was. we got turned down by 35 venture capital firms. 35. I mean, it's 35 presentations, heavy duty, money guys. And they said no. And we said, oh, okay. Let's do a strategic partnership with a large corporation. So we talked to 10 large corporations, and we almost closed a deal with General Motors.
Wow.
And Phillips of Vanilla.
Yeah.
Together they were going to finance us. We would do car synthesis, so they didn't have to build clay models anymore.
Okay.
For General Motors, and we had a technology for visualization of MR and CT scans that nobody had seen before. It's really cool.
Seemed like a good.
And that would keep, and that would finance the company and keep us alive for the 5 years we needed. Okay. Yeah. We weren't sure what would happen in the 5 years, but just keep us alive. Okay. We were in Manhattan closing this deal. I mean, right at the last stage. 20 people around on a boardroom on the 40-something floor across the street from Grand Central Station. And, it's half attorneys and 4 parties, and it was the most stressful meeting I've ever been in my life. And at the end of the day, everybody's saying yes, shaking hands. In the business world, that's a done deal.
Okay.
All that's missing is
the signatures and
the attorneys have to put it into writing what you just did, and what would happen the next day, and you sign it. Yeah.
Formalities at this point, right?
Not in this case. Because the part of General Motors we were dealing with, do you remember H. Ross Perot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was his division of General Motors. His company had been bought by General Motors.
Okay.
And it was his division that we were dealing with. The day I think it was like 2 days separating these two events. We were closing our deal, we thought, downtown. He was uptown at the General Motors building, insulting the board of directors of General Motors.
Oh, okay.
And when that story broke, the night of our supposed deal in the Wall Street Journal, it broke. Everybody knew that anything that had to do with General Motors and H. Ross Perot was dead, and our deal was right there.
Oh my gosh.
So Ed and I are frantic.
After all that, persistence and
45 attempts.
Yeah.
And we couldn't think of anything else. And we were frantic. And Lucasfilm has to sign off on all this because they get a piece of it.
Okay.
And they're frantic. So I remember we're in the limo, leaving Manhattan, going back out to JFK to fly home. And we came up with a Hail Mary idea. That is, call Steve Jobs.
All right.
Now, we had met him already. He had been kicked out of Apple, and he had invited Ed and me down to his mansion in Woodside. I remember sitting out on the grass one day as he proposed to us that as his next stunt, he would buy us from George Lucas and run us as his next company. And we went, nah, we want to run our own company, but we'll take your money.
Okay, yeah.
And he says, okay.
All right.
But when he ran his number by Lucasfilm, it was about half of what General Motors was talking.
Okay.
So they kind of left him out of the office.
Yeah.
So here was our Hail Mary thought was call him up again and say make exactly the same offer at half the valuation of General Motors. Everybody, Ed and I didn't care about the money. We just wanted
to stay alive.
Stay alive, right?
Yeah.
He did, and that's how he became our venture capitalist.
Amazing.
He did not buy us from Lucasfilm, which is his version of things.
Okay.
But, okay.
All right. Good to set the record straight on that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Enough about him.
Yeah. Now, you've played a really seminal role in developing digital graphics as a technical and artistic medium in a number of ways. Can you tell us more about your sort of influence over the...
Well, the first thing's sort of obvious. The first thing I would do is a paint program. And that is interestingly, my first job with my fresh PhD from Stanford was as a professor at NYU, working for a man named Herbert Friedman, who turns out to be one of the earliest people ever in computer graphics. And I look back at it, and he kept saying to me, why don't you leave this theory stuff behind and start contributing to computer graphics? Because he knew I was an artist, and he thought I was a natural fit.
Perfect.
And I said this to him. I said, Herb, if you ever get color, I'm there.
Okay.
Because it's still
right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, broke my leg. I come out to California where something good's going to happen. The something good is Xerox PARC.
Okay.
Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, right at the height of its
So
glory.
many good ideas came out of there.
Oh, it was such a wonderful, it was such a marvelous place. And my best friend, Dick Shell, had built a painting program at Xerox PARC with color pixels, which nobody had seen before. And I saw that, and he knew I was an artist. He says, "Alvy, you've got to come see what I've been doing since we last saw each other."
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw it, I was
this was your wish list.
That's
right?
this is it. Yeah, computers and art. And I got myself hired on at PARC.
Okay.
They fired me later, but because they decided not to do color. This is another one of those genius moves.
Where they made the wrong choice, right?
But that's how I got the start, and then I went to the next place. Turned out to be a very wealthy man on the North Shore of Long Island named Alex Schur. He had a place called New York Institute of Technology. Okay. NYIT. He owned this school. Okay. And it was basically, I don't want to say that. That's too mean. It was for students who lived on Long Island with their parents and drove to school. Got it. And get a degree. Okay. And he also had this same owner. Okay, you picture this because this is a beautiful place. It's Great Gatsby land. Yeah. It's estates as far as you can see in every direction. And this guy, Alexander Schur, had cobbled together 4 of these marvelous estates on the North Shore. And the buildings on his campus were the mansions on these estates. Wow. So we did video in one mansion, we did computer graphics in another mansion. Yeah. Oh, it was just
great setup.
Every day. Yeah. Oh my gosh, is this real? Yeah. Is this real? Yes, it was. And so my joke is that we got started in a garage too. It just happened to be a 4-car garage.
A little bit fancier than the humble beginnings of many other companies.
But he had he saw himself as the next Walt Disney. He had a 100-person old-fashioned cell animation team making a movie called Tubby the Tuba. And his ideal was he'll get these computers and computer graphics guys, us, to make it cheaper to make this movie, and he'd get richer. I mean, he was really an entrepreneur. Yeah. Okay. Well, that didn't happen quite that way, but we learned from these old timers the business of an animated movie, all the logistics problems and how you do it and everything about it. And well, that's when we said, gee, let's be the first people to do this on the computer because this is nuts. Yeah. All those drawings. There's got to be a better way. Yeah. Nuts. And we can do a better job too, a higher quality job. So, and eventually we did all that. But we've detected that he wasn't going to be our future, even though we had this idea of making the first movie with him. Yeah. We could see he didn't have it. All right. Tubby the Tuba was a horrible flop. We were really happy we didn't have anything to do with it.
You needed the vision of...
And right then is when we got the call from George Lucas to come. And
fabulous.
We left. Absolutely. Little surprised at George Lucas because he was a Star Wars guy.
Yeah. Now, speaking of pixels, you have a recent book called The Biography of the Pixel, which I understand you spent 10 years writing?
10 years, yeah.
Wow. And if I understand it right, the pixel is sort of broadly construed as the connection between the analog and the digital world. Is that right?
I think that's a fair way to put it.
Tell us a bit more about it. And
so one of the motivations for this book is that we all now live in a vast ocean of pixels. Mm-hmm. I think it's a 1 with 21 zeros after it might capture the number of pixels. And nobody knows what they are. Which says, wait a minute, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is our culture now, and nobody knows what these are. That's just wrong at some level. And so I decided to write this book where I would, with no math, explain just intuitively what they are. Okay. And that's the first 2 chapters of my book.
Beautiful.
And so here's the way I like to explain it. You think of a picture as a rumpled sheet, rumpled cloth, where the heights of the rumples or the brightnesses of
Okay.
the image, and you let this cloth settle down over a bed of sharp nails, evenly spaced,
Right.
and you only preserve the points on that cloth that touch the sharp nails.
Mhm.
You throw away the infinity of other points. In other words, you sample
Right.
the continuum that is the image, throw away the continuum, and only preserve the discrete samples. The magic of the sampling theorem is that if you do that right, you've saved everything. The samples are a perfect representation of the continuum. It sounds like you're getting away with murder.
Yeah.
You're throwing away an infinity but not losing it. That's
Yeah.
what it says if you do it right.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's a beautiful way to describe it because it's very visual.
But here's the problem. They're points. They're point samples.
Mhm.
You can't see a point. 0 dimensions.
Right.
They never were little squares. Ever. That's a complete misconception.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest misconceptions of our modern world. They never were little squares. Pixelation is a false idea. You can't see a pixel because they're points. My cell phone is full of probably billions of pixels. Can't see them. There are files in there, right? So what happens? Well, you click on a file name or whatever, and suddenly there's a picture on the screen of your cell phone or your computer. What's happened right there? Well, each of those samples has been spread by a little blob of light that's continuous, an analog blob of light, and there's evenly spaced across your display. Those are not pixels. Those are what I call display elements.
Right.
But they're not digital. They're not little squares.
Mm-hmm.
They're analog. They're driven
by
a digital pixel.
World.
And the sampling theorem says if you do that spreading of the pixels properly, then the continuum of the little solid spots add up to form the continuum that was originally there.
Beautiful.
It's magic.
Yeah.
And it's the magic that we all live in every day.
We take it for granted.
Right now, this video is being done that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You can't escape it. In fact, the way I say it is, I call it the whole class of pictures made of pixels. I call it digital light. Mm-hmm. It's vast. And in fact, nearly every picture in existence today is part of digital light. You can go to kindergartens or art museums to see the old analog stuff. Yeah. But that's just tiny part. And if you think about the digital explosion, then nearly every picture that has ever existed is now part of digital light. Absolutely. It's a huge thing. Yeah. So that's the motivation for the book is like, come on, people, this is huge. We need to celebrate this. Yeah. And it sort of just happened at the millennium, coincidentally, that, and I use Toy Story, the first movie, as an example of the moment when all old media types, analog media types, converged into one, the digital medium. It all happened just about 2000, plus or minus. Yeah. And I call it the Great Digital Convergence. It went right by, nobody seemed to notice. And I said, wait a minute, people, this is huge. This is really huge what just happened. That's why you can do what we do every day. Yeah. And now we just take it for granted. We don't. You do. No, people don't even, kids don't even know it was ever different than that, right? Yeah. So I spent a lot of time talking about Moore's Law, how we're puny human beings. We can't think exponentially into the future, but also you can't think exponentially backwards unless you were there. Yeah. So, kids today, they have no idea what it was like 100 billion, a factor of 100 billion ago. Yeah. Which it was in 1965 when I made my first computer graphic image. And they shouldn't have to. I mean, they started now. It's an interesting historical fact, but that's what it is. Yeah. So we're sitting at a Moore's Law factor of 100 billion, over 100 billion right now. It's going to hit 1 trillion in about 3 years, I think. Everything good about computers will be 1 trillion times better than it was in 1965. In every possible way that you can think of. Yeah. And if you were born into that, you start there. Well, lucky you. Yeah. I'm so happy, you know, that I'm in my 80th year now. That means I'm going to get to see where it goes. And
But having seen it before and after, we share a sense of wonder about it. That in
yeah,
some
and that's
ways
what I'm
that-
trying to pass on in the book. It's
Yeah.
like, this is a wondrous thing.
Yeah.
Here's how to appreciate it. In fact, that's one way
Yeah.
I think about my book is that it's a, you know, a digital light appreciation course. So
Yeah.
it's like music appreciation. The more you can't be Bach yourself, but you can appreciate it by knowing a little bit more about
Yeah.
what Bach did or what Stravinsky did or so forth. Right?
Right.
Same goes.
And those of us who have lived without it kind of get the difference a little bit more than if they've been born with it. So let's talk about your life as an artist a little bit. For us in theoretical computer science, you're the creator of an iconic image for us, Synapse, which is the cover of the FOCS Proceedings, which has been used for 41 years. What's the story behind that piece? How did you create it?
That was. So I had made, when I made it, I had made one computer graphic image, but just one.
Okay.
And it was a spiral, equiangular spiral used for a weather satellite engine.
Okay.
That was it. I really wasn't into it yet.
Yeah.
So when I interviewed for a job out of Stanford, I interviewed at 2 places, 3 actually. But one of them was IBM Watson Research Center.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful place.
In Almaden?
No,
the one in Yorktown Heights.
Yorktown Heights. And the other was New York City. Well, I was young, I'm married man, and I had to live in New York City.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. So, but I went up. I loved Yorktown Heights so much. I would go up and hang with the guys up there a lot and prove theorems with them and stuff like that. Climb mountains with them. There were a lot of mountain climbers there. It's always Arnie Rosenberg was one of those guys, and I had the cover in 1971 for Scientific American.
Mm-hmm.
People kind of knew that about me. So Arnie asked me to design a cover for the next, I think we were still calling it Switching and Automata Theory.
Okay.
Then, proceedings of the SWOT proceedings, now known as FOCS,
All right.
Foundations of Computer Science. The 14th was still SWOT, I'm pretty sure. So I said, sure, because I like designing covers and posters and things like that. And it finally happened one day when I was miserable. It was winter in the Bronx in a blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
And my car broke down. I was commuting from somewhere. My car broke down, and I was forced into this SO station in the Bronx. It was red, white, and blue, but it's dirty. Red, white, and blue, kind of soot color. Black from traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Ugly version of an SO station, not one of those pretty artistic versions. Okay. And my car was broken somehow, so I was going to have to spend hours in this horribly ugly place in the middle of a blizzard. How do I? What do I do to survive this? Yeah. I said, Alvy, design the cover. You can do it in your head right now. Do it now.
So without pencil and
nothing.
paper,
I just did it in my head.
Thinking about it.
And I just saw synapse in my head.
Yeah.
I was
those threads.
My hands and the synapses came off. I was always into how the brain was structured. I knew a lot about that. And I love the idea that somehow we're going to figure out how structured things did this.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And I said, so I had the basic concept. And when I finally did make it back home, I spent the next month executing it.
Oh, wow. But it was born in an SO station. So.
And I did it with India ink and Rapidograph and vellum and French Cur. I mean, no computers. This is all, just drew my hands by looking at them. And
well, we're very excited that we have the original here.
I was really
we are thrilled to be able to display it on the walls here. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So, and so many of us have sort of grown up with it through our careers. So it's really
I'm really proud. That's probably my greatest contribution to Foundations of Computer Science was synapse.
Manyfold, but that's one of them. So now, in a career as rich and diverse as yours, is there a common thread that you see going through all of the multitude of activities and a through line that you can?
A through line. Well, it's got to be the mixture of technology, love of technology and love of art. In fact, I think one of perhaps the secret of Pixar's success is that, and maybe it's because of my background, is we never let this pernicious distinction between the technically creative and the artistically creative to exist. We would not allow it. Mm-hmm. And I've been, almost every other place does allow it. So I've been at Microsoft, where if you're smart, you program. Otherwise, you do the simple stuff of artistic and marketing and all that stuff. No, that is so wrong. And if you're in a graphic arts house, then the creatives are the cool people and the technoids. The technoids.
Yes. Are the...
Oh, people. No, that is so wrong. We would never let that happen at Pixar, because they both required each other's creativity. And it is different. There's no question about it.
And they both exist in the same people too, as you're
saying. They can, yes, they can. But they've got to, it's not just words. They had equal promotion capabilities and salaries, and, everything was the same. But most important, a mutual admiration society for the other kind of person, because you had to appreciate what they did. You couldn't look down your nose. That's so wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a great philosophy. So, last one, what does theoretical computer science have in common with the movies? Is there a connection there? Because we've gone from one all the way to the other.
Well, I really don't know how to answer that well, but even though I dissed AI back in the past and changed careers to do something that would happen in my lifetime, like make the first movie. Yeah. I did it. Now we're back and say, oh, wait a minute, where are we now?
Exactly.
And it's turned out to be kind of more surprising and different than I thought it would be, which of course is what Moore's Law says. Yeah. You don't know what you can't know.
You can't even imagine what the next.
So the first sign that, this is not answering you, but this is kind of what I'm thinking about. This, I ran into a former colleague, another pixel packer like myself, in Cambridge, England. My wife, we were on her sabbatical at King's College, which is Turing's college. Yeah. Pretty amazing. And this friend of mine approached me and said, "Hey, Alvy, we don't have to program anymore." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Look at this." And he handed me a paper, which turns out to be from Berkeley. Okay. I call it the horse and zebra paper, where you train a network, again, with 1,000 pictures of horses, just arbitrary, 1,000 pictures of zebras, arbitrary, no text at all, just pictures. And when it's trained a certain way, you can hand the network an arbitrary picture of horses, and it will output that same picture to you where every horse has been replaced by a zebra, or vice versa. Yeah. Okay, so I looked at that and I went, how does it? I don't even think that's a well-posed problem. I mean, what's a horse? What's a zebra? Yeah. He said, that's the point. We don't know. And it's too hard to reverse engineer it. Yeah. And all of a sudden I went, oh my God. And here's what I'm going to try to answer you a little bit here. I went, oh my God. I always thought I'd be able to understand when we got to this sophisticated level how it all worked. But of course, that's what Turing told us wasn't the case. Yeah. We can't even tell you whether algorithm's going to halt, for Christ's sake. By the way, the halting problem was done by Martin Davis, not Turing. Okay. He named it and he proved it. Interesting. Yeah. And he helped me with my chapter 3 is the reason. All right. Now he says, Al, it was such a trivial turn on the printing problem that Turing did prove. Yeah. That I'd be embarrassed to have anybody say that. But it's true. Okay. He named it the halting problem. Okay. Everybody credits it. Yeah. Turing, yes, but we think of it's a little old man up on the hill right here in Berkeley, who saved me in chapter 3, where I got a little over the end of my skis writing about computation theory. All right. Good. So chapter 3 is about computation theory. It's about Turing. Fabulous. Yeah. I bring up Gödel. I don't explain. What I wanted to do was prove that Turing had invented the stored program computer. A lot of people think it was some engineer. I said, no, it wasn't. It was Alan Turing, right here. And I explain his proof and show you where the program gets put into the memory and the data gets put.
Yeah.
He had the idea.
The whole
He
architecture.
had the
Yeah.
idea. Now, so in the hardware versions are just to make the idea go fast.
That's all.
But
Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
that's the secret of computation. It's got to go fast.
If you're going to make movies, it has to.
So I shouldn't be surprised because of undesirability. We shouldn't be surprised you get off in the weird spaces of computation. Things are going to happen that we cannot explain. So, I think of what my friends like Dick Carter did was they piled into computation, simple Turing computation theory and started figuring out what was the complexity of computation.
Yeah. So
Really important. And trying to find their way through all these strange backways.
trying to understand it, or at least prove that you can't understand it. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. And we need more of that.
Yeah.
I think we need, surely we can get further in than we are
Yeah.
understanding what's happening out there. I think, maybe I'm wrong, but my intuition is that what we're doing now is we're letting the programs compute on themselves,
Mm-hmm.
which we disallowed most of my computing career. You never let a program write on itself, right? The operating system wouldn't allow that.
Right. Separate.
But in
now,
neural nets, that's exactly what's going
happening.
on.
Yeah.
You get in there.
The sky's the limit. So,
yeah. And maybe this will finally come out of it. I'm convinced. I mean, that's my belief system is that we'll understand how this works, but it's just a belief system.
All right. Well, you made a few movies in the meantime and gave us tremendous, new technology and lots of art in the process. So.
If I say one more thing about art, it's I think we're exploding right now.
Mm-hmm.
Moore's law has finally got the computation of sophisticated computer graphics computation is now real time.
Right.
The Unreal Engine is doing what we only dreamed of a few decades ago in real time.
Yeah.
Completely shaded.
Gaming and
just lit and shaded.
Stuff
And ordinary people either have access to it or soon will.
Mm-hmm.
And the artists are already starting to explode. And I'm just holding on because I think this is a tremendously exciting time. I can put it a little bit more focused. And this is in my book. One of the things that we at Computer Graphics adopted without even thinking about it is what I call the central dogma of computer graphics.
Mm-hmm.
We will model using three-dimensional Euclidean geometry in our computer memories.
Mm-hmm.
And we will also use Newtonian physics for the gravity and for the motion and the optics. Okay. And we will project that into 2 dimensions using Renaissance perspective.
Okay.
Every movie Pixar's made honors the central dogma.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, any of the movies that have been made using computers come from the symphonic, from within the symphonic form that I'm calling the central dogma. So what I want to say to the artists who are about to have all this in their own hands is break out of the central dogma.
All right.
There's nothing about computers that forces us into the central dogma. Show us what else is out there.
It'll be a new frontier. So we'll have to check in 5 years and see what they did with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking with us today. It's been wonderful to hear about your many experiences and to meet the man who also created that image that's so iconic for all of us in theoretical computer science. So thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's been fun.